Okay, there's a problem with the recording, but we got it sorted out. So I trust that you all had a productive week and you had the opportunity to read and look over the homework and retain some of the information that we learned last week. Did anybody have the opportunity to read the newspaper and they want to share today? Anybody? Anybody out there?
Can you repeat that?
Sorry, I was saying I was wondering if anybody had the opportunity to read the newspaper and if they wanted to share. Hello?
Good morning. No, sorry, Ms. Bullet, I didn't get a chance.
Okay, we have about 4. I think Candice was, Sheena, you were trying to get Candice's attention a few minutes ago. I think she's here now. Candice?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Yeah, okay. I was just saying, okay, good. So we had a tough week. What happened this week? Nobody read the newspaper. We read, some persons read half of the chapter. What's happening this week? We still trying to get our feedback, trying to get comfortable within the class.
I had a very heavy week this week.
I can briefly discuss the chapter, Ms. Bullard.
Okay. So I'm trying to give you all your 10%, and I don't want you all to be quiet. It's a discussion-based class, so I want, nobody saw the papers this week and nobody has anything to share.
No, I thought you were talking about reading the articles. I could discuss on the next chapter, but I didn't read anything in the paper this week. That's what I was saying.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
No, but remember, very hard week. Okay, so I give you all a little break this week since you only read the paper this week. But as compliance officers, we are supposed to read the newspaper every day. And these are the water cooler conversations that we are supposed to be having with the staff, okay, or with the executive team. So I know it's hectic, but try at least once a week, read the newspaper. And I always encourage persons, if you deal with other countries, put it on your Facebook page, or you can put our news or the Tribune and the Guardian on your Facebook page, and you will see the highlights throughout the day. Okay, and you don't have to read every single article, but 1 or 2 may catch your attention. Okay. Okay, great. So you did establish the WhatsApp group? Because I know this is 10 weeks and people seem to think that, oh, we have a lot of time and the time just runs up on us and then we miss our 5%. So did we establish the WhatsApp group? Does anybody, have you all even thought about with civic organization, or no, this is just the second class? Yeah, we didn't even think about that yet.
We did establish the group. I think everybody thought about those, but we didn't drop it in the chat just as yet.
Okay. I just don't want y'all to lose, let the time run up on you. Okay, fine. So let's talk about the classwork then. Did we have the opportunity to complete the classwork? Are we?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. And are we comfortable? Are there any questions from the classwork?
My only question, Ms. Bullard, about the classwork was let me see which one it was. I think it was the last section, which asked, what did the IMF say in their 2019 concluding statement after their visit to the Bahamas? They said quite a lot. So I wasn't sure which part we had to really focus on.
Okay, so we talked about disaster relief, correct?
Correct.
Okay, does the question say in regards to disaster relief, or it just says?
No, it just says after their visit
to the Bahamas. Okay,
yeah.
So they did have about, I think, 8 to 10 points. But
yes, it was very long.
Yeah, so we spoke about disaster relief, and then we this class is about tax evasion. And so they had 2 points on those. So I would have wanted you to go over the 2 2019 version, because if you just put IMF report, there has been updates since then. I wanted you to just look at it and see the type of correspondence that they leave. And of course, we learned in intro what the plan was that we had put in place. And depending on which site you would have looked at, it would have told you, you know, the action plan from the Bahamas as well. So I just wanted you to have a visual and some awareness of their statement and to know exactly what we have done to satisfy their request.
So to piggyback off of, I'm not sure who asked the question just now, but like she said, it's a very long article. So what if, I guess, we get a 10-point question that asks this and we discuss other things rather than disaster relief and tax evasion? Would that still be fine?
That would be fine. So
Okay.
You would perhaps, why is it not coming up? Okay, right. So
Who is that?
no, I am trying to share the screen and show you on the screen.
Who's that?
Hello? You're asking who is where? Are you talking to somebody else? Okay. Okay, so yeah, so there are about 10 key points. And so if you normally, if it's a 10-point question, you pick 3 points to speak about, and you should get 4 points. So of course, last week and from intro, we've been talking about what happened with the disaster relief. Then this class, we're gonna talk about tax. So you should be able to get full points, you know, if you just add one more of the initiative. They spoke also on compliance. And so, you know, if you were to get that question, you would get, you don't have to write the entire concluding statement, but 3 of the key points that they listed about the Bahamas would be sufficient. Okay? We good?
Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, great. So since nobody did the paper, let's Deanne, let's talk about what you read in chapter 2 and what you got from chapter 2.
Okay, no problem. I would have also scanned, I'm sorry, Miss Bullard. I was trying to get my 3-year-old out of the house. His Grammy just came to him, so I was a bit distracted.
Okay.
But I did read the business section of the newspaper this week. For the most part, the article that stood out was with the Bahamas leading, well, kind of adapting, I wouldn't say leading, but they've really started adapting the approach for using cryptocurrencies. That article stood out to me a bit. And they also spoke about the sand dollar a bit more. So it wasn't anything super interesting, and we would have touched on it last class also. So I think it was a repeat of that in the business section. But this week I'll look and see if anything else stands out.
Okay. And
in
for
regard,
those,
go ahead.
sorry. I would also ask an interclass for persons to follow the FinTech and RegTech hub at the Securities Commission. Is anybody following that? Because that's
No.
compliant.
No,
Say that again, Ms. Bullard.
I actually wanted to add to what Deanna was saying.
Okay.
I
Okay.
did see an article where speaking in regards to the sand dollar, where they had the police department going through the trial stages of the sand dollar. And I can't remember the actual name. I think it's DigiPay that it's called, and it's the trial phase is over, and they're about to introduce the sand dollar to everyone in the market.
Okay, so are we prepared when they introduce it? Are we aware of the risks associated with the sand dollar? Do we understand that if persons are still calling it a cryptocurrency? Do we know that it's not cryptocurrency? It's a digital currency, because cryptocurrency is completely different.
I don't think the Bahamian people fully understand it or know it. They don't know. So
Okay, so as compliance professionals, when they roll it out into our organizations, are we ready to accept it wholeheartedly because we've done our research, we understand the risk, we know what controls need to put in place? Or are we going to push back because it's too risky and we're not familiar?
I think we'll have to adapt to it, in all honesty, because we pretty much are the people that would have to introduce it, the people within the financial sector. So if we don't introduce it, no one else is going to introduce it, really.
Correct. And so have we joined? Are we following it's a Securities Commission FinTech Hub? Are we following the FinTech Hub at the Securities Commission that tells you all about the currencies, all about the laws associated with it, and all the updates and how to keep abreast of it?
Me personally, no,
No.
I'm not.
Miss
No.
Bullard, is this on like Instagram or Facebook or something? I wasn't in
The
last
Securities
class.
Commission website.
Website, okay.
Yeah, the Securities
check it
Commission.
out.
Yeah,
And I
so
think it's on the organization too. Well, it's on the central bank to introduce it into the financial institutions, and then it's up to the financial institution to introduce it to their staff so that they are knowledgeable, so that they can present the customers with the knowledge as well.
okay, and so what is gonna happen once the institution is interested in rolling it out? Compliance normally signs off on it or approves the new product or new service that we want to offer. And so this is why I want you to be ahead of the game when they roll it out, or should they roll it out in your institution. You would have already done your research. You would already be following the Securities Commission. You're aware of how it's regulated, how it works, and any risks associated with it. And so that's why I asked you to follow it, because of course we know it's coming. It's one of the initiatives that the governor put in place to ensure that we are less cash intensive, and so that our overall risk rating does not increase. And so we want to, be ready to accept it and not prolong it, because we are not trained. We don't know how it works. We don't know what controls need to be put in place. And then we are still confusing it with cryptocurrency, which is very high risk.
Ms. Bullard, my work, we actually have a presentation on the sand dollar coming up. I have to check my calendar. I think it's within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, excellent.
So we have someone that was actually on the board that, led that project that's coming to talk to us on that. So I'll let you guys know how that goes.
Okay, very good, excellent. And so please pay attention, because it's a new product, and we want to ensure that, again, we can put good mitigation policy in place. We can't eliminate all the risks, but we can mitigate it. And a very important part is we need to understand the product and how it works. Okay, a lot of times products come out without policy, without procedure, without training, and people simply don't know how it works. We would have watched Dirty Money, some of us, where we watched the HSBC case, but the case just before HSBC is Volkswagen, where they defrauded the world with their emissions test. They were able to defraud the world with their emissions test because they created a system that nobody knew how to use and nobody was trained on it. And so when the inspectors came in, or even the staff who was using the system, just simply did not know how it works. Okay, so that's very important. We don't want to roll out a new product or service and not understand how it works and the risks associated with it. And a lot of times, CEOs are pressured. You have to roll this product out by December. It has to be this. We have to launch this. In the loans department or the credit department, they have various initiatives each month, where they offer a special interest rate or some lower fee for a certain product or service. Do we understand the risk? Do we understand the decrease in fee? Do we understand anything that could possibly come along with any risk associated with that? And a lot of times we don't pay attention, and a lot of times the promotion is over before we even get a chance to review the product and service and see if it's something that should be offered to the public as a promotion. Okay, and so as compliance professionals, we want to ensure that there is a policy surrounding any promotional events that occur. Like I said, primarily it happens with the credit department or the sales team pushing various, trying to meet their quotas. So you want to ensure that they stay within policy, even though, they have a quota to meet, I guess, each month.
Ms.
Okay?
Belen,
Yes?
for Volkswagen, is it safe to say that they didn't know the product or that they were deceived? Because they were deceived from top down. The salespeople didn't necessarily know what was going on. It was the top who knew and didn't tell them.
Right. So who is ultimately responsible for the institution? The board.
Oh, I thought you meant the salespeople didn't know, quote unquote, know the product.
Yeah, they didn't know the system.
Okay.
Right. So ultimately the board is responsible for the entire institution.
Correct.
They are to ensure that senior management is training persons. They, in the banks, when we paid millions of dollars for these various anti-money laundering systems, and we have had people from all over the world come in and train us on how to use the system, and sometimes it's been very, very complex. Sometimes even after we've learned how to use the system, we've had an audit and we had to do updates. And again, the persons who create the system fly in and show us, how to use the system. And so I would imagine a company like Volkswagen would, have the same type of policy or training facilities for their staff. And again, somebody in the company who was in charge knew. They just defrauded, you know what I mean? They did not pass on that information, but they didn't pass it on because they knew exactly what they were doing. And then again, if we are in position, this is why we are in position to call out the company and say, hey, the policy says this, but a lot of times we don't even know who our regulator is. We don't know what the law says, and we definitely don't know how to I guess, notice if something is different or we're not following what the law says because we don't ever read. Okay, and that's why I'm saying wherever you work, find out who your regulator is. Get a copy of their policy. I'm not saying to sit down and read it all at once, but compare it to your internal policy and see if there are any gaps. You'll be very surprised. There are a lot of gaps, particularly if your internal policy has a version date on it. All the laws updated in 2018. And so if your policy says 2013, 2010, of course, there are some gaps in there. So it's up to you to be information seeking. If your institution is not good at training, you can't just say, well, these people don't train it, they have responsibility above my pay grade. No, you have a responsibility. Compliance is everybody's business in the organization. And if you're not advocating for the proper training, then you have to go out and get it yourself. But at least know a lot of times when these things happen, it happens when the police comes in or when it's advertised on the news, and we are shell shocked. Right? And particularly if you want to be in compliance, you want to know that what the law says, what your policy says, if you're doing things properly, and if you're not. Does the system give you sufficient information, or is there some manual things that you have to do? In some of these institutions, the systems aren't very savvy. There is some manual work to do, but because they gave you a system, even though it's deficient, we say, do you know what it takes to do it manually? It has to be done. Right? We would need 3 or 4 staff members. There's not insufficient staff, so we have to do it this way. Nobody's doing it. Information is missing. That could possibly cause you go to jail. Gone are the days when, a slap on the wrist or there's no accountability and transparency. That's what, from the top down, the government, every time the prime minister comes on, that's what he's saying. We were working on transparency and accountability in all the reports. That's what you get. There's not enough accountability. There's not enough transparency. We see the politicians being brought before the courts and they all got let go. Who's going to go to jail? Me or you? because we don't have sufficient money to pay for the high-end lawyers. Who's gonna take the rap? Okay, so please, like I say, as you move up the ladder, or even in your current position, know what your regulator says, know what their policy says, know what your job description entails, and go through it and see if you're actually doing what it says. Go through and document the systems that are to support your job. Because one day you may have to explain it. And the way you don't go to jail is by saying, this is the capabilities of the system, this is what I do. But when you ask questions and your response is, I don't know. But that's what the system is to. I didn't know I needed to go another step. You know that today Miss Bullet is a law-abiding citizen. Tomorrow I could go and commit a crime. This world check your names in your system every night. No? Then who's checking to find out if Ms. Bullet committed a crime the next day? Or does that happen only at monitoring? You need to know. But do we know? Whistling, do we know?
Some people know, some people don't.
Okay, great. So these are the type of questions you want to ask, you want to find out, and you want to protect yourself. Okay, and you want to be able to speak knowledgeably to auditors and inspectors and know that these are the gaps or these are the issues. And if nobody's advocating for the issues to be fixed, they just go on for yes and yes and yes. And we've always done it this way. Okay, and so now, like I said, we're working on accountability and transparency. And so we sign at onboarding that we agree to follow these laws. And so you just want to protect yourself and not end up in jail. Okay, and understand your job and the risks associated with it, and to know, what all your policy says. Okay, good, very good. Okay, so tax evasion, Deanne, you want to give us an overview of laundering the proceeds of tax evasion?
Yes, ma'am, no problem. I was so I read the chapter this morning, to be honest, but I made sure I woke up on time just to read it. So basically, chapter 2 speaks about tax evasion and tax avoidance. Tax evasion being unlawful and tax avoidance being lawful. And they also touched on the acts and I'm guessing the laws and regulations that were passed in order to dismantle any tax evasion or avoidance that was occurring in financial institutions. It went in depth as to the various types of taxes, and they also spoke about the areas that you would basically, you would check for each individual or beneficial owner when basically trying to trace back to which country or state that they would be subject to taxations on. So at my company, we had a standard KYC procedure implemented, and on our KYC forms, some of the areas that we do check for the clients that we're onboarding is their domicile, their nationality, where they reside. So those also help you to determine and basically track if a person might be evading taxes or trying to avoid their taxes. And the chapter also speaks about performing customer due diligence in order to, like I said, investigate if anyone might be doing those activities. I'm not sure how much more you would like me to.
Okay, no, that's great. That's a good overview, and I'm glad you're familiar with it, because taxes is a very specialized area of the financial services sector. And in the Bahamas, you know, it's a bit different from America, where they have like income tax and various different taxes, and we don't. So it's very unfamiliar. However, it's created an entire function in financial institutions since FACA and CRS has come on, and even VAT. And so
Right.
primarily, I think we talked about it in other classes where we said, you know, the only way for a country to survive is from collecting taxes and then their natural resources. So of course we know what's happening with our natural resources, right? It goes to one particular family, and it's not, you know, the money is not shared amongst the persons or the citizens of the country. Like in Morocco or Monaco, they get like $2,000 or $3,000 a month off of the natural resources. So outside of natural resources, you collect taxes. Now, it's unfamiliar to us in the Bahamas until VAT came about. Before VAT, we just used to have custom duty, and then of course national insurance, which is the social security tax. But if countries want to stop borrowing and continue on in the deficit, they need enough persons within their country to collect tax, and they will survive. And that's what's happening in Canada. And this is why Canada is calling for residents, because the more persons that live in the country, the more tax they will collect. One of the problems we have in the Bahamas is, we like to say, when it's election time, where the VAT money going? Okay, so countries can implement these tax systems and they can be successful. However, there has to be transparency, accountability, and less corruption, because once that tax dollar is collected, will you put it into building schools? Will you put it into roads? Will you put it into the infrastructure of the country to make the country better? That's the next part of it, what doesn't happen in a lot of countries. That's why a lot of persons don't support, you know, taxation, and they try to evade taxes as much as possible. So of course, we know back in the day, the Bahamas was seen as a tax haven. And so we were very attractive for persons to come. And if you live in the United States, you just open an account in the Bahamas or an offshore jurisdiction. Now in the Bahamas, in America, taxes can be anywhere from 15 to 35% of your income. Also in Canada, very, very high taxes. In Canada, because the taxes are so high, the country still survives. In the Bahamas, even if we were to, you know, have income tax and all these various taxes, we have a lot of cash and goes. And I think we talked about this last week, where the lines on the cash and goes are out the door, or the Western Unions are out the door. That means money is being sent out of the country. And so even if we were to implement like an income tax, we would still need to put like a moratorium on these cash and goes, or limit the amount of money that can be sent out of the country, because we will still have a problem. But in Canada, you can, you know, they welcome you as an immigrant. They're going to charge you the 15 to 35%, depending on the amount of money, you know, which tax bracket you fall in. And then you still have to live, and then you still have to eat. And so 50% of that salary still stays in Canada. However, in the Bahamas, you can squat, you don't have to pay rent, you can steal electricity, you can do all these things. And so if we were to put in something similar to America or Canada, we would need to stop squatting and be very adamant that, you know, you have to go and pay rent, and you can't build these shanty towns, and then you cannot send all this money out the country each week, because we would still be defeating the purpose. Okay, and then that way, since we cannot curb the immigration problem, that is the way, you know, just tax the people, put the money where it's supposed to go, and the Baptist would be okay. But we would definitely need, if we, you know, do implement additional taxes, then fix our immigration problem and fix the amount of money that's being sent out of the country. Because if we only need to keep 50%, we understand that persons move across the world to help their families and send the money, you know, back to help their family. But they can't be sending back 80%. 50% in the Bahamas will be sustainable. But right now, there's no control, and you could score, like I said, you could squat, so you don't have a lot of shanty towns. They have all sorts of black market electricity and water and what have you. And so you're using these things that cost the country money, but you're sending 80-90% of your money out of the country. And so if we can get a hold on that, then we would be okay. Okay, so back in the day, we are known as a tax haven. So it was cheaper to bring your money to the Bahamas, put it on an account, pay fees, because I worked in private banking for most of my career, and private banking fees are about $3,000 to $5,000 per year. And that is cheaper than paying 30% of your wealth, because some persons have like $10 million, and then you pay that every year. So a lot of persons opted to just put their money in another country where they could evade, they did not disclose to their country that I have money in the Bahamas. And so when tax time came around, they did not have to pay their country that 30% in taxes. And so the book talks about tax avoidance versus tax evasion. And it's a very, very thin line. And this is a very popular question on the exam. And so I want you to listen carefully so you can explain it. And so tax avoidance is legal. And with tax avoidance, we can go to Miami and shop, and we can say we want unassembled furniture. Unassembled furniture is 5%. Assembled furniture can be 25 or 30%. They change the rates now. It used to be 45%. So that's an avoidance. Okay. If we go and ask the persons to change the invoice, that's evasion. Okay. That's the difference there. So if you get a product that has a lesser rate, the same furniture, but it's unassembled. If you get an energy efficient refrigerator or washer and dryer, it's 5% because it's energy efficient. You will spend an extra $100 for the energy efficient, but you'd only pay 5%. If you get the regular washer and dryer or refrigerator that's not energy efficient, then you pay 25%. Again, that is avoidance. Okay. Now, when we go away and we come back from Miami with 10 bags, and we walk up to the customs officer and we say, I spent $500. Is that avoidance or is that evasion? Deandra?
Evasion.
Oh, evasion. Correct. I feel like we had this conversation before. Have we had this conversation before about tax evasion and avoidance?
That probably is a different class.
No,
Okay.
I haven't.
No, this is the first time, okay? So all of us Bahamian women who like to go away and shop till we drop and then come back. When it was $300, we could have 10 bags and we would say we spent $300. Now it's increased to $500. So now we say we spent $500. That's tax evasion. And we should be going to jail for that, okay? But of course, all you have to do is know a customs officer or whatever. So please stop. Whatever is when you go away, if you spend $3,000, bring your receipts to the sum of $3,000 because we definitely have the bags. Okay, so that's the difference. So changing invoices is evasion. Putting your money in an offshore bank and not disclosing, because you could put your money in an offshore bank, but you could disclose to your country that I have this $5 million in the Bahamas, but we definitely don't do that. Okay, so once you do not disclose, that's evasion. You go to jail for that. Okay, so do we understand the difference between evasion and avoidance?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, good. So next time y'all go away, y'all do not evade these taxes. You'll pay your taxes to the country and make sure, advocate that the country puts the money where it's supposed to be. Okay, so a few years ago, President Obama realized that there were billions of dollars in offshore banks around the world. And so, he came on and he said, listen, before I bowed to China, because countries all around the world were borrowing money, and of course, China had a very free hand a few years ago, and what they do is they loan countries loads of money, and countries aren't able to repay. And so they are happy. They ain't like the collections department who will call you up and say, bring the money. No, they are very happy that you cannot pay. And what they do is then they collect the collateral. And so in a lot of Caribbean countries and even some countries in Africa, China has been saying, okay, and this is before the pandemic, you owe us all this money, you cannot pay. Okay, we are gonna acquire your port. So out in the back of the straw market, our port out there, where we borrowed the $192 billion from them to construct that. But Lord help us if we cannot pay, because I think it was in the Grenadines or Grenada, they were unable to pay, and so China has acquired their port, and so that's in Grenada. I think that's where all their their major shipping industry. So you can imagine, or the port where all the cruise ships come in, and we have the largest, second largest cruise registry in the world, and then ADP where all the everything else comes into the country, everything is imported through there. Can you imagine? We cannot pay, and so this is what we put up as collateral, and the Chinese acquires it, and so this is what has been happening around the world. And so after Obama saw this, he said, before I have to bow to China, because essentially that's what happens if you owe somebody and you cannot pay. I'm going to fix my tax system in my country. And so America invested $18 million in the IRS to facilitate FATCA. And FATCA is the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, which just states that no matter where the money is in the world, if you are American, countries must disclose to the IRS that you have money in their country. Okay, and so he took the responsibility from the individual and he placed it on the financial institutions. So around the world in 2000, and I think it came out in 2014, but it was implemented in 2017. We then had to report every American citizen that had money in our bank. And so, of course, this cost a lot of repatriation of money to America, because the person said, well, I pay you $3,000 to $5,000 a month in fees, annually in fees. It makes no sense for me to keep my money offshore since I still have to pay my tax. And so, because I really have no business interest in the Bahamas, the sole purpose was to evade tax. I'm going to repatriate my money back to America, and hence the net effect of that was we lost about 50 customers. Okay, and so with institutions that only had like 200 customers, losing your entire US book, led to detriment, and a lot of private banking institutions closed down. Okay, and that was just from FATCA. So after this was implemented in the US, and it was very successful, they had spent $18 million to upgrade the IRS to be able to facilitate this information coming in and to be able to collect monies from the various countries. They had made that back in the first year. And so around the world, Switzerland started to say, we never thought it would work. And we definitely didn't want to invest that amount of money if we weren't going to collect it. And so Switzerland followed, then Germany followed, then every other country in the world who felt that their citizens had money offshore jumped on board, and then they created CRS, which is Common Reporting Standard. And so FATCA is the US, where if you live in Switzerland or you're a citizen of Switzerland and your money is in the Bahamas then has to report to Switzerland that Lissaline or Diana has money in the Bahamas, and then that money is taxed. So just like with FATCA, there was a repatriation period where all the Swiss people or the Italians, Germans, they repatriated their money. All the Canadians, they gave them like 2 years. They say, listen, we don't want all of y'all going to jail because, of course, you know that there are very heavy fines levied by the IRS and the various competent authorities in regards to taxes around the world. So half of their citizens would have been going to jail. All their wealthy citizens would have been going to jail. So they did give them 2 years. They said, listen, repatriate the money home, close out all those offshore accounts, and we will, you know, turn the blind eye for 2 years. However, after the 2 years, then you will be fined very heavily. And I most recently had a client that was fined, you know, he did not disclose the amount of money he had in our banks in Bahamas. And I think Spain sent us a letter and said, because the bank that where I was employed was closing down, they said, listen, this guy is going to be charged and fined, and we'd like y'all to hold $10 million of his money before you allow him to, you know, close out his account. So we had his money on hold. The bank was about to shut down, and about 1 week before we, you know, called their government and said, listen, we are closing down. We need to find out. They said, okay, 6 million of the 10 million, he's being fined for tax evasion. Okay, so that's how serious it is now. Go ahead, Deanna.
Hi, Ms. Bullard. As you were speaking, that kind of jogged my memory. I recently attended a training session with the competent authority. It was representatives from the competent authority, where they spoke about FATCA and CRS, and it was a new portal that they had implemented for financial institutions. It's called the AEOI portal. In order for the financial institutions to start filing and reporting to the competent authority on the clients who are American. And it was FATCA, CRS, and it was one more, but I can't remember the name.
CBC.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
That is it. That is
Right.
it.
Right.
Mhm.
So they opened this portal in 2017, and each year, what each financial institution is, first of all, there are two types of models. The Bahamas is a Model 1 jurisdiction, which means that we send our information to the competent authority. A Model 2 jurisdiction is you send your information directly to the IRS or directly to the competent authority of Spain, Germany, what have you. But our competent authority for FATCA and CRS is the Compliance Commission. So the Compliance Commission houses the AEIO portal, and we upload our information to the Compliance Commission, and then they send the money to, or the information to Spain and to France and to America. So we are a Model 1 jurisdiction. So that's just the difference on how the upload is sent. So most recently, of course, you know, they always say that the lawmakers should be the ones that go to jail. And they have fixed the law, you know, after they saw that basically they wiped out private banking in all these offshore jurisdictions. They created a loopholes, CRS and FATCA loopholes for dummies. So salespersons, you know, the offshore world was already very competitive. And so in this loopholes for the, you know, for dummies regarding CRS and FATCA, it was like 600 pages, and it tells you how to beat the law legally, how to avoid this CRS and FATCA tax. And so there were different categories and different registrations that you could possibly register your business or your company as, or sign up as an individual as to, you know, defray or not being reported. And so that is what salespersons now have to do in the offshore world, is to find like a very savvy way to retain this business. Because again, that very wealthy person is not going to pay the tax and pay the fees. So if you don't find a way to curb them having pay that tax, or you know, get a lesser rate, like normally, like I said, it's between 15 and 20%. It depends on which tax bracket you fall into. If you don't find a way for them to pay like the lowest rate, you know, sometimes like seniors get discounts, and there are various different categories that you fall into. There's tax treaties and all sorts of initiatives out there. So you actually have to read the 600-page document if you want to, you know, remain active in the private banking world. But like I say, private banking, a lot of customers, and they couldn't reduce the fees, and so that, you know, caused a lot of job loss in the Bahamas. As well as all this policy, procedure, and regulation. It was very expensive to train persons on FACA and CRS. They're still having trainings now. The bank started it back in 2017. However, I think like they had in the law, they had said managed companies do not need to be reported. But I think now that's where the CDC has come into place, and that's why they are offering trainings now, because there's a new category of reporting required now. And so, like I said, managed companies at one point didn't need to be reported. So of course, all the wealthy people, you know, got their relationship managers, and they popped up saying that I manage this account. And so now they see that that's widespread. Now they have a new requirement on reporting, and so that's why they're still having these trainings. So each year, around January, you start your customer due diligence. What you want to do is you want to check your FACA and CRS sheets that were filled out at onboarding. So normally when you go to open an account, this is a part of the KYC that is required. You have to fill out a FACA form, you have to fill out a CRS form. And believe you me, when we started this, persons automatically said that, you know, we are from Cayman, because Cayman is non-reciprocal. The UAE is non-reciprocal, meaning that you can share information with them, but they're not going to share information with you. Of course, the Bahamas does not have income tax, nor does Thailand. And so what we found is we saw millions of people, or the, you know, the majority of our book, people saying, oh, I'm now a citizen of Thailand. I'm now a citizen of Bahamas, because it's Bahamas, rather than pay your country 30% of your wealth each year. Okay, and so you would find that persons from all over the world, they may have had a Swiss passport, but they're saying they're Bahamian citizen. They may have had a German passport, but they're saying they're from Thailand. So of course, this created a administrative nightmare. So each year, you go through your KYC and you want to ensure that the proper information is on file. Meaning if the passport differentiates from where they say they live, their tax, their residency, then you want to look for that work permit, look for that citizen's permit or spousal permit, whatever it is. Because of course, the individual is going to go for the lower tax jurisdiction, and they may just have a summer house in the Bahamas. And a very popular singer, Shakira, was just charged with you know, a very high amount with tax evasion, because she did the exact same thing. She has a house, I think on Paradise Island, and she was on tour all over Spain. And so the law, you know, every time they create a threshold, they find a way to go below it. So the laws say once you would have spent 183 days in a country, you are liable for taxes. And so, of course, that's a little over 6 months, 3 days over 6 months. And so what she did, you know, they were able to, I think, pull out her tour dates and say, no, you are on tour in Spain for this amount of time. So there was no way you could be in the Bahamas at this time. And so she was fined for tax evasion, because she tried to say, and she does have residency. And so when it becomes very complex trying to, you know, determine, do I need to report Shakira to Spain, or is she a Bahamian? Or does she have citizenship? We don't have a copy of their passport, the stamp part of it, to see how long they traveled. So it's very difficult to decide. You know, she has the Bahamian citizenship, but how do we verify that she stayed in the Bahamas for the 183 days? So it becomes very complex when you're trying to determine, you know, these dual residencies for these you know, individuals. And so you can go online and you can read all about, you know, her being charged for tax evasion, but it's based on the residency. And like I said, the clients are always going to go with the, you know, whoever has the cheapest or no taxes at all, because they feel that, you know, very wealthy people feel that governments are thieves. They don't invest the money where they are supposed to. So therefore they hate to pay taxes. Okay. And so, like Diane said, you look at the domicile of the person and you look at, I guess, the citizenship, because like I say, when this all rolled out, almost every person said that they are from a lower, you know, rated tax jurisdiction. And so you want to, in January, you do, you know, the checks and balances, and you get the relationship officers to go out to the clients and find out, you know, get the proper documentation. And in some cases you have to ask, did you spend more than, you know, there's a residency test or reasonableness test. Did you spend more than 183 days in a particular country? And if you did, then you are liable to pay their taxes. So after you would have done all of your KYC checks between January and July, and if you have a big, you know, what should I say? We had 800 clients, so that was a lot of people to have to verify and check. Then in July, the portal opens up, and then you upload all this information into the portal. And the portal requires you to put their name, their address, their TIN number, and that's another problem that I see across the board in financial institutions. The system does not accept, if your country offers a TIN, the system does not accept you not to put that TIN number in. And so that has been a major problem for us. There's a category where you select country does not offer a TIN, but if they do offer, you can't get to the next page, and therefore you cannot upload the information. And again, the portal is only normally open for about 30 days, and you have that 30 days to upload this information and submit to that competent authority all this information from all the persons that are on your books. Okay, is that clear on how CRS and FACA works?
Yes,
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Bullitt, I wanted to add, like, working at my institution, a lot of times people with like dual citizenships, they try to run away from it. Like, a person will be born in the US and have a Bahamian passport, and if you ask them for their social security number, they'll be like, well, oh, I don't know, my social security number, I never lived in the US. But really and truly, you could just tell them to call the US Embassy, and the US Embassy will provide you with your social security number. So it's a lot of times people try to run away from it. And there's certain things that you could pick up on to determine that, well, since you don't have a social security number, if you say so, well, present me with your certificate of lost nationality. So it's like people just have to know what to look for and what to ask when you work in these financial institutions, because people will run away from it.
Of course, and of course they do, and they hope that you don't notice. But the U.S. is very specific on U.S. indicia, and U.S. indicia is if you have a U.S. driver's license. And Ms. Bullitt has a U.S. driver's license, but you know, I had it from college.
Even if you have a
you
US
know, and
number.
they say if you have a U.S. address, if you have a U.S. telephone number, and of course we know that Bahamians, you know, back in the day we used to get these U.S. addresses just for shipping purposes, not that we ever lived there. So again, this is a part of doing your customer due diligence, really asking the required questions to find out if you indeed are, you know, are liable to pay taxes in the U.S. Now, we could use our discretion and say, okay, this is just a license. No, Ms. Bullitt works in the Bahamas, so most of the time, you know, she she is not liable, she should not be liable. And then you can ask, have you spent more than 183 days? But a lot of times the salespeople or the relationship managers are very timid. They don't want to, because the competition is so stiff. Oh, you can't ask the customer that. That's too personal. Nothing is too personal. It's because you really need this information to find out if you should report this person, because the institution does not want to report anybody who shouldn't be reported. However, there is a section that's called non-calcitrant persons, where the U.S. said, if you in doubt, report them, and we will investigate that for you. So they don't give you a social security number, fine, report them anyway, and then we will decide. But of course, that doesn't look good. The institution, that may upset the client, particularly if they were not liable. And so you would have the CEO saying, no, only report who you must report. Don't do, because this customer, the client,
Not my institution.
So
they are not.
Oh, they say report everybody.
Yeah, they ain't willing to get fined for nothing.
Okay.
So if a customer give you an issue, fill out an STR on them.
Okay, well, very good, very good. But in the offshore world, where the competition is stiff, they are like, no. I said, well, if you cannot get the information for me, then if you can't get the TIN number, I have to report them separately and say, the person refused to give the TIN. And so they are very, they don't want you to report anybody who shouldn't be reported. But it makes your job very much harder. And what happened last year, there are countries that sign on to say we are part of the reporting, and so each year the competent authority puts out a list of countries, and they sign various keys, various agreements that they would share this information. And so each year we get a list. And I think last year Switzerland was on the list for the first time, and we had a very big Swiss book. And then Panama was on the list for the first time. And so to get the relationship, remember now, they signed these CRS forms when they opened the account. So of course, they were not reportable at that time. So they put any garbage on the form and we accepted it. But now they are reportable. We had to chase each of them to get them to fill out the forms properly and ensure that they put TIN numbers and the proper persons and who was reportable. Now, a big problem, what we found was that companies did not know how to fill out their CRS forms. And as staff of the financial institution, they just expected us to know, but we are not tax lawyers. And so we had a big pushback with our companies trying to tell them that, hey, we don't give tax advice. You actually need to call a tax lawyer, especially if it was a very complex company. You need to call a tax lawyer to find out exactly how you should be, how you should fill out the form and to make sure that it's filled out properly. And that, we got a lot of pushback from that. Just basically, hiring a tax lawyer was expensive, but if you are liable for these taxes, it's not up to us unless you have a tax lawyer on file to guess or give any tax advice on how to fill out the form. So for the most part, the clients did not understand that because they did not want to spend money. But you have to be adamant about filling out forms and ensuring that it's correct. And whilst we're on forms, let me just share my screen, and we want to look at the various, these are just the US forms. So there's one form for US, and there's one form, there's a CRS form for every other country. And so you want to ensure that you give your client the correct form and the correct updated form. So this is a very popular multiple choice question. So please, and persons always get it mixed up. So please pay attention to this. So a W-9 form is for all US persons. So if you have a US person, they have to fill out a W-9, okay? In the corner of this W-9, it says revised October 2018. These forms are only good for 3 years. If your if you have a securities arm and you're doing trades for your clients, we are going to go back and talk about withholding tax. It's very important that if you are reporting withholding tax, you have an updated form, because your organization can be fined. Okay, so because of the pandemic, the forms were supposed to be updated every 3 years, October 2018, 19, 20, 21. This was supposed to be revised in this year, but due to the pandemic, it has not been updated, or they use an extension on the form. So if you deal with account opening and you give them this US form, then you have to ensure that every client that signed this in 2008 signs it in 2021 when the new form comes out. Okay, because you could be charged, especially if your company offers trades and securities. Okay, so always look at the date. These expire every 3 years. Okay, and this is the W-9 form. W-9 is for all US corporations and individuals. You select right here if you're a corporation or individual, right there in the middle. Okay, and then it goes on to, you identify what type of company you are. W-BEN-E, this is for non-US companies. Okay, so as you can see, revised July 2017. However, this was supposed to be updated in 2020. You need to put a note on file that you went to the IRS site and they say this is the most current one. Because of the pandemic, they did not update this. Again, you can get a fine if the form is expired and you are doing trades. Okay, so make a note. This form should have expired in 2020 and you went to the site and there's no new form. So this is for all non-US companies. If you're from the Bahamas, if you're from Switzerland, if you're from England, non-US, and that's the W-8-BEN-E. The one for US, W-9. Okay, and so when it says Chapter 4 status, this is what you don't want to give tax advice on how to fill out this part unless you are very familiar and comfortable with it. Most of the businesses would be passive NFE, and then it tells you if you select that, then you complete that section. I'm not good with my Roman numerals, but I can't tell you which one that is. That should be 24, I think. So you want to ensure that when this is filled out, the correct name of the organization, everything is filled out. You ask them if they got tax advice and they select their Chapter 4 status, and then you want to make sure that they fill out the section that it says is filled out, and I think that's section 24. And so you go there and find out, see if they filled it out, and then that the signatures are there. Okay, and the signature of an authorized individual or the beneficial owner. Okay, a lot of times these forms are not filled out properly. Where I worked, we had a securities arm, and a representative from the IRS came and did an inspection. All our forms were expired. Some were filled out incorrectly, and it was just a task to get these up to date. So, before we didn't pay a lot of attention to it, you have to pay attention to it and make sure that it's filled out properly. And all of this is a part of your due diligence. People want to say, when FAC and CRS, why do you have to start from January? You have to start from January because you're checking all of these forms and ensuring that they didn't expire and that they are filled out correctly. Okay, and so that's the W-8-BEN-E. So last year it would have been crazy if they had updated the form, because we would have to go to every customer and say, listen, we need a new form filled out. And depending on, there are other forms, these are just the 3 basic ones: the BEN-E, the W-9, and W-8-BEN. But as you can see, there's a W-8-ECI and 8-IMY, and again, it depends on what type of company you are, and you do not want to guess. So you tell them go and get their own tax advice. Okay, and then the W-8 ban. This is for all non-US individuals. Okay, so W-8 ban non-US individuals, W-8 ban E non-US companies, W-9 US individuals. Okay, is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and we are familiar with this form, and we are doing the various checks and balances, or do we just say they fill out the W ban? Okay, tick. We in checking to make sure it's the correct form.
Ms. Paula, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was listening to everything, but in a case where the client does not want to share their social security number, which is very common now, and you know that they have a US passport, you know that they have a Bahamian passport, would you allow them to fill out both the W-9 and the W-8 and still open the account?
No, why are they filling out both? If you have a US passport, you fill out a W-9.
So under no circumstances are they supposed to fill out both?
Do they have a citizenship of another country?
They do on the US passport. It says that they're US citizen. On the Bahamian passport, it says that they're Bahamian citizen.
So do they have dual citizenship?
Yeah, they have dual citizenship.
Okay, so again, that's complex, and again, they would need to go and get tax advice on what their responsibilities are. But again, US indicia, a W-9. Because this says, sorry?
Yeah, I understand, but they don't want to give out their social security number. So, okay.
But why are we asking for social security, you mean, for when you report them?
They should be giving out their social security number on the form, correct? Doesn't it ask for their social security
It does.
number?
What I know with bank forms now, and I notice it with First Caribbean as well, they ask you, they have a tax form as part of their account opening process. So if you have US indicia, you have to give your social security number. The same thing with Fidelity, you have to give your social security number. If you were born in the US, but you have a Bahamian passport, that means you have dual citizenship. So you still have to provide your social security number, and we still have to report it.
Okay, so if this form at number 5, and this is on the W-8 ban, it asks you if you have a US tax payer identification number, SSN or I. There's a GIN number that each company gets as well as once they register for Cfatf. So it's up to you. Would your company consider this form incomplete if number 5 was left empty?
Well, we would make them fill out a W-9.
Well, in this case, we make them fill out both, and not to provide their social security.
Okay, but you're making them fill out both, but that doesn't mean that that's correct. And so you have to get a tax lawyer to, document how you handle dual citizenship. Okay, because you can't just guess, and that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of rules, and you have to ensure that you're following the rules. So either your compliance have to decide, or you'll have to get a tax lawyer to document this is our policy regarding dual citizenship. Okay, and if the person does not give their social security number, it's up to your organizations to say that this form is incomplete. We are not opening an account if the form is incomplete. But course, the CEO is going to say, we don't want to lose a customer. And so therefore, when you don't want to lose a customer, you gotta ask, are we going to report this person as non-compliant or not? Because you can have some information missing, and they have a section where you just report the person as non-compliant. So yeah, institution has to make those decisions, but you can't guess this is what we are supposed to do. You have to find out exactly what the law says for dual citizenship. Okay, and it should be in policy, because there are a lot of people who do not give information. So non-recalcitrant, and there's a section 2 that tells you you can do that. If you cannot reach a customer, you're allowed to use the KYC that you have on file. And if you do, you have their name and their date of birth and some other information, that should be sufficient on you reporting the person. But again, this has to be documented, and everybody in the institution has to be on the same page. You can have some people doing it one way, some people using their judgment, and that's why it needs to be documented. Okay?
Okay.
Okay, good. So make sure we understand what the W-8 ban is for, the Ban-E, and the W-9, okay? Because they are very popular questions on the exam. And remember not to give tax advice unless you're a tax lawyer, okay? Okay, very good. And so do your due diligence each year before you upload. And definitely, if you're paying withholding tax, you want to ensure that these forms are not expired, because you should not be paying withholding tax. A part of the audit that the IRS conducts is to check that no forms are expired. Now, there are certain categories on the W-8 Ban-E out of your withholding chapter 4 status. About 5 of these, if you will select, I think one is non-reporting IGFFI. There are 5 of these where the form does not expire. And so again, you would need to have it written in policy, knowing that the form does not expire. And so when you're doing your due diligence, these types of companies do not need to be updated. But then everybody else, if you select nonprofit or passive, active probably does not expire. Direct, all of that, they expire. So again, all of that needs to be written in policy so you know exactly that you have an updated form and how it works. Okay. Types of taxation, sales and value-added tax. Of course, we are very familiar with that, and we know how that works. Tariff and exercise tax, again, that's the one all of us should be in jail for. Imposed on foreign imported goods. Social Security tax, we have NIB, is collected at the time of wages for employees and income of self-employed persons. Corporate tax is charged on a business profit, either by their income statement method or balance sheet method. Income tax is tax on income. Withholding tax is applied to a certain type of income, such as interest, dividends, salary, whereby the payer deducts the tax at the source from the income of the payee. And again, withholding tax, if you invest in the stock market, or you have a securities arm at your institution and you do trades, each of those trades carries a 30 in the US market, 30% withholding tax that the company collects and passes on to the US government, to the IRS. Capital gains tax is a tax on the capital gains made on the sale of disposable of capital assets. A wealth tax is imposed on a taxpayer's network, estate inheritance tax. So there are all kind of taxes that various countries around the world have, they issue. And so this is how your tax adds up to from 15 to 30%. In the Caribbean, I think it's us in Trinidad that has only VAT, and a very low tax rate. The international bodies are pushing to ask for us not to be as competitive and for everybody to be on the same page. Like, they don't want it to be more attractive to come to the Bahamas because it's less tax. And so I think no matter who wins the government in 2022 or 23, that has to go up. They are pushing as well for what we did in 2018 when we updated the law. Was we did make tax evasion a predicate crime. However, I don't know if the government uses a staggered approach again, and they only put it as VAT tax. But again, we got noted for that, and in December 2020, the Attorney General revised and revamped the law to say tax evasion is tax evasion from any other country as well. But at the time, he had only written the law so that you could be charged if you did it like NIB or the excise tax with customs or VAT. But that has since been fixed. Okay. So they are the various different types of tax. And again, it's not really up to the government, it's the international regulators who are saying this is the only way a country can survive. You can't keep borrowing money. You must put some taxes in place to, not only not be more competitive than any other country, but to ensure that you have sufficient revenue coming into the country to pay, for the country's expenses. Okay, so that's a big push. So don't, when you hear all the political rivalry going on, and this one will waive tax and this one to do this, and I think the PLP even said, if we win, we gonna have no VAT for 1 year. Listen, when that happens, VAT will have to triple. If they don't collect it 1 year, they'll have to collect it, double it the year after. And you can expect that it's going to go up to 15% right after the election, no matter who wins. Okay. Another type of tax with the withholding tax, the same 30% that I talked about, was qualified intermediary rules. Again, that's the withholding tax on each share, the 30% that has to be paid to the US government once you have a securities arm and you do trades and investments and what have you. And so each year you have to report, it's called QI, qualified intermediary. You report based again on how what their chapter 4 status is, and chapter 4 is just a chapter in their law that deals with FACA, and it just says it tells you what category you fall into, and that each company that is a qualified intermediary will pay, collect the US taxes and pay it to the IRS. Okay, and so again, it's a very complex area that has to be dealt with when, right? I think you have to report this by April of each year. And so you get all the information of all the trades that were done. You have to calculate it. Every 3 years, you have to do an audit on it. There's a whole system that you upload to, and you put in the person's name and account number, and this is the amount, millions of dollars in investments or trades that they would have done this year. This is 30%. So again, very high fines if it's not done properly. Again, when you're reporting QI, these forms cannot be expired. That's a fine if you're using an expired form. And the way for them to check this is that every 3 years you're required to do an audit, and you have to have an external auditor sign off that they would have checked and ensure that the dates on the forms are correct. Okay, so normally if you don't have a securities arm, if you're just a commercial bank, then normally you don't deal in any securities, and so you won't be affected. But if you work in offshore and you do have a securities arm, or somebody is trading on behalf of your clients, then you're required to do that audit. Okay. Any questions or concerns? Are we good with the due diligence that has to be done each year? Do we understand the tax evasion versus the tax avoidance? Do we see the difference between FACA and CRS?
Clara,
Okay, Felicia, bad. You probably familiar. You probably work in an institution where you do this, and so you understand. You understand. But okay, what about the person?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So what about the person who don't work in the institution and not familiar?
Ms. Bullet,
I'm Ms. Bullet.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, I would ask you this before, Ms. Bullet, in regards to FATCA and CRS forms and who are required to complete them. And you said that it all depends on the institution themselves and I guess what practices they want to put in. But in regards to W-8 Ben, the form itself says, I've had people push back before and say, the form says it's for a non-US beneficial owner. So I've had maybe a director or a signatory push back on it before. And I mean, clearly the form states it's a certificate of status of beneficial owner. How do you get around trying to explain that to them?
Okay, so the law says you must identify a natural person, right? And so even though it's a company, you are signing this on behalf of the natural person, right? And that's why it asks you at the end of the signatory, it says.
No, I don't mean that. I don't mean that. That's not right. Let me give you an hello.
Picking up. I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Yes.
Okay. Let's say an entity is opening an account.
Mm-hmm.
They complete the W-8 Ben E. The beneficial owner completes a W-8 Ben. Then we now get to the directors and the signatory. Sometimes they automatically give it, but let's say you come across a director or a signatory that doesn't want to complete a W-8 Ben because the form clearly states that it is for beneficial owner.
Right. So the beneficial owner has to sign the Ben, and then whomever is the signatory signs one on behalf of the company.
Correct, but they would argue this point that the form states it's for a beneficial owner.
What the Ben E says that?
The W-8 Ben itself says certificate of status of beneficial owner.
Right, so they are sending, okay. Back to what I was saying, the law says you have to identify a natural person, whether you're a company or not. So you look at the shareholders registry, and whomever is the beneficial owner has to sign that individual Ben.
I know. So the BO already signed it. So now
Right.
when it's rippling down now to directors and signatories, who some people require them to complete this form, but they will come back and say it says beneficial owner, and I am not a beneficial owner.
But who requires them to sign that?
I've come across some people that require that a signatory and a director complete a W-8 Ben just due to the mere fact that they will be doing business in the US, and so it's for quote unquote FATCA reporting purposes.
No, you sign the W-8 Ben, the beneficial owner signs that, or if you are signing on behalf of them. The director signs the Ben E because he's signing on behalf of the company.
Behalf of the company, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So again,
I know when I tell people and all, when they come to me and ask me my take on it, the form that is beneficial owner, I can't back you up with that.
Right. So I mean, I've only known that we use the directors or whatever. If they are the signing authority, they sign the Ben E. Now, again, like I said, each country is different. And that this is why you do not give any tax advice at all. You tell them, go and get a tax lawyer, and their tax lawyer will tell them how to fill it out. And if it's incorrect, then the IRS is gonna, the tax lawyer has an indemnity insurance if they give out wrong information and have to be fined. The bank doesn't have the indemnity insurance on taxes. So therefore, you know, so that's the protection. So like I said, just don't give any tax advice, because each country is different. And you can't learn the law of every country to find out if they fill this out correctly. And then they have treaties, they have all sorts of stuff. So yeah, it's very, very complex. But like I say, I've only known the directors to fill out the bank. And then again, the bank sometimes, you know, they want the business, and so they allow persons just to send in the form and without requesting this information be certified by a tax lawyer. That's very, very risky. But they can't expect an individual to know the tax law of every country and to ensure and know how the company is set up in that country and fill this out properly. So a lot of people just do it and they just accept the form, but there's no way to verify that it is entirely correct unless you get that tax lawyer to confirm it. Okay, so be very, very careful with that. So again, in 2020, the FATF was supposed to come in and help the Bahamas, you know, with the FIU, and because of the pandemic, they were not able to come. And we were subsequently blacklisted by the EU in May of 2020 because they weren't able to make that visit. So when the FATF was coming in, of course, you know, audits take a very long time. So the regulators have, you know, coordinated. If the IMF or the FATF is coming in and the EU have something for them to check, then they're going to check it on their behalf. So because the FATF wasn't able to come in and give word to the EU on whether or not we had fixed the law that basically said that tax evasion was a crime in the Bahamas, but like I said, it was only for VAT and customs tax and what have you, then they blacklisted us. The EU did, because of our tax, you know, that law being out of place. And so they were working on fixing it. It had been sent to the House of Assembly and it just wasn't tabled, and it was finally tabled and approved to the Senate and what have you in December of 2020. But in the interim, they had blacklisted us. And they had promised us previously that, you know, before they blacklist us and we suffer reputational risk, they will advise us. However, they didn't advise us. And so therefore, because, you know, we have always felt that we were the competition and these international bodies are trying to wipe us out. I mean, they are in the fight of money laundering and terrorist financing, and the world has to get on board to, you know, make it work. However, we felt that, you know, the more laws we put in place, the more they have come out with, and they don't look at the scale of our country. They don't send financial aid to help us implement these systems and controls. And so the US spent $18 million just to fix this tax system. Yeah, the Bahamas spent $18 million to send them this information. No, and so, you know, like I said, it's not only wiping out our financial services sector. Because we were known as a tax haven, it closed down a lot of banks. And so I'm not certain if it was an honest mistake or we were just trying to use another staggered approach to get work fine ideas or savvy ways for us to keep some of this business. Because like I said, again, nobody's going to pay taxes in their country and then pay but the Bahamas fees. And so therefore, of course, we're no longer, and we don't even want to be associated with being called a tax haven. So what would make it attractive for persons to bring their money here and keep their accounts open? And so I don't know if that's what the Bahamas was doing, but out of that blacklisting and the back and forth correspondence, even when PFD was in power, Ryan Pender advocated that, the more we put in place, the more they're going to put, because eventually they or enforce on us, because eventually they want to wipe out our financial services sector. Peter Turnquest lashed out at them. And so right now, after this blacklisting, Attorney General Carl Bethel applied to be the chairman of the Cfatf, and he was successful. And so now we actually have a seat at the table. So when the vote comes down to blacklisted Bahamas, we have somebody there to now advocate for us that, no, we did do what we were supposed to do, or you might not have been able to come in and verify that this law is in place and it's effective, and that tax evasion is a predicate crime under money laundering. However, we are doing what we are supposed to do. We did complete the action plan. It is becoming law. And so now that presence there, we have him as the chairman of the Cfatf, and then we have Kevin Bain as the UN. And so, like I said, we are developing future leaders. We need a lot of help. We've lost 17% GDP. We saw what the pandemic did to tourism. And just before the pandemic, with all this policy, procedure, and regulation, banking has been slowly, dissipating. So what is our next industry? And we need persons to get to a point where they are not afraid to go internationally and advocate for the country. And you have the inside view right now. I mean, before Carl Bethel became the chairman, we had the president of Spain and the president of the Netherlands, and they are on every board, and they were essentially making decisions that's best for their country, right? And not necessarily best for the Bahamas. So it's good now that we have representation, and we need more. Okay, and so I really hope that you are serious about being educated and getting to the point where you can go out there and represent your country locally and internationally. So when it comes to the blacklisting and all these things that give a negative impact on us, we'll have somebody who will have the inside scoop on what the Bahamas needs and what's best for us. Okay. Any questions or concerns about taxes? We understand the difference between avoidance and evasion. We see the different types of tax. We know that when the political ads come on and say we waive back, we know the grave effect of that. And then when persons say we're not going to raise VAT in this term, no, but by 2024, I think they have to raise it. So no matter who wins the government, I don't know how they're going to drop that on us. So don't let that determine who you're going to vote for. Okay, any other questions? Y'all sleep or y'all awake? Let me see you, Ryan.
You're awake, Miss Bullock.
We here.
You're awake, hey. Well, Lisa, I have from you, this is second week. Let me see who else in this class I have from. Sheena?
I am right here.
You're there, okay. So
I'm not in compliance, sorry, but I'm not in compliance because I just was trying to observe and understand these two forms. I saw the name in the book, but I didn't know what the forms these were. So I just was trying to understand why you were explaining it.
Okay, so you have a general overview. Have you opened an account in the last two or 3 years?
No.
Oh, okay, because right when you go in, they require you to fill out these forms now.
Oh, okay.
Right, it's a part of your KYC package.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, what about you, Relisa? Is Relisa there? No? Okay. So, but Sheena, otherwise you understand the various types of tax. You understand what our requirements are and how we have to send this information to the various countries.
Yeah, when I was reading the book last night, I got an understanding of withholding tax because I see that in a lot of accounts. So I was getting a better understanding of the different type of taxes. So it was very enlightening when I read it to get a better understanding, appreciating but tax evasion. And then I remember some stories of Bahamians with tax evasion. So all of that came to mind. I started to put everything together. So I'm getting my feet wet with it.
Okay, great. And like I said, of course, it's a very popular question on this final exam, the W8, W9, and WBENI, and then the difference between tax evasion versus tax avoidance. And how you would want to answer that is definitely you want to say tax evasion is illegal when people try to defraud their governments, or they lie, or they change invoices so they don't pay the required amount of tax. And then tax avoidance is legal, and this is when we buy an energy efficient or unassembled, and we find legal ways to decrease the amount of tax that we have to pay. So you want to ensure that you can explain the difference between the two and then give an example. And primarily, a lot of people always use the Shakira example. That's the most recent, that involved the Bahamas. Okay. Okay. Any other questions or concerns? No? No feedback?
I have a quick I don't know, it's not really a question. It's just I just want to make sure I have the correct understanding. So the W9 is for US persons and companies. The W8 Ben E is for if you're
a non-US company.
Tax.
No, a non-US company.
The W8 Ben E is for the non-US company.
Mm-hmm.
And then the W8 Ben is for
a non-US individual.
Is for US. Okay. So you can fill out a W9 for US individual or company.
Yes.
And then the W8 Ben is for the US person as well.
No. A W9 is for US individual and company. The W8 Ben E is for non-US company.
Okay.
And the W8 Ben is for a non-US individual.
Okay.
Yeah. And make sure you write that down and study that, because a lot of people, when it comes to the exam, they get that mixed up. Okay.
Okay. That was Candace just now.
No, that's DeAndrea.
Oh, DeAndrea. How I remember when I first got into the industry was a W9 is US straight across. It doesn't matter if it's an individual or an entity. The W8 Ben E, the E on the end of that is for entity.
Okay.
Right? So if the W9 is US, then the W8 Ben has to be non-US. So W8 Ben E is a non-US entity, and the W8 Ben is a non-US individual.
That makes sense. That's easy to remember now that you said the E, the difference between the E, the entity, and okay.
Correct. But just remember, W9 is US straight across the board. It's only one form for anything to do with US. So the W8 Ben has to be non-US, and E is the entity. So the one without the E is for an individual.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Felicia, for sharing. Okay, Deanne?
Miss Bullard, is it on the exam? Do they ask who the forms are for, or do they ask specific details of the forms?
Yeah, they would just ask which form do you fill out if you're a non-US individual or if you're a US individual or if you're a US company or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we want to take a look at, if there are no questions, we want to take some time to do the classwork, and we want to ensure that we know how to answer these questions. Now, I see in this classwork, there is section 319 of the US Patriot Act. And since we have some extra time, I'm going to let you go and do your classwork so you can ensure that you have all these definitions down pat. But section 319, that goes over into chapter 3, and that allows funds to be seized in a US account if those funds are held in a non-US bank. So it could be an account in the Bahamas, and section 319 allows the US, through the US Patriot Act, to seize those funds in any non-US jurisdiction. Okay, and so next week, when we get into sanctions and how this works, you will find out that the US has, once you accept, US currency, there's an extraterritorial aspect of the US dollar over various countries, and they put all of this into law. They also have, if you use a US correspondent bank, they have all of the funds hitting the Fed at one point. And so once that money would have hit the Fed, the US Federal Reserve, their central bank, then that allows them to prosecute you. Okay? And so a lot of times in foreign countries, they felt that, when it came to money laundering or terrorist financing, the country probably was a bit corrupt or didn't want to extradite their people, or depending on who it was in the country, they had some protection. And so to avoid all of that, they, arranged it this way to ensure that the US had some jurisdiction over that foreign jurisdiction. And so even if your country said, well, you won your case, they would then, they could prosecute you in the US. They could seize your funds, and this section of their law allows for it. Okay, and so the US Patriot Act was established by George Bush with the intent to fight foreign official corruption, police operations of multinational financial institutions, and to limit the activities of offshore banking centers. Okay, so they purposely, updated. It used to be the Dodd-Frank Act, but then they updated, revised, and revamped it to extend the to ensure that they were able to seize any funds in regards to money laundering. And recently, and you could go online and read, something similar happened with Julius Baer, where the principals of Julius Baer, the CEO, and I think 3 of the relationship managers, they had a very large Venezuelan book with at Julius Baer, and they had left and they were going to go to Corner Bank. And just before they transferred over to Corner Bank, one of the principals, the relationship manager, he went into perhaps for a vacation, and they arrested him right in the airport, and he is now serving 10 years in jail. They investigated and saw money laundering, invalid KYC, all sorts of fraudulent things happening across those accounts. And subsequently, Julius Baer had closed down. I can't say if it was just from the reputational risk, but of course, they would have had to close out that entire book. Of course, we know that Venezuela is heavily sanctioned by the US. However, we are the Bahamas, so we don't have them sanctioned, but you know, they do have some influence on us, but we do have a heavy Venezuelan presence in the Bahamas. And it is very difficult opening those accounts, and there's all sorts of information that because they are sanctioned, you have to be very careful about the law if you're going to open those accounts. Okay, so that's section 3.19 of the US Patriot Act. And so you want to use this, ensure that you can answer these questions, because like I said, some of these will be repeat on the final exam. You can see the question from chapter 3 is explain how sanctioned countries have received assistance during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so that requires you to do some research and find out. There are 3 ways Venezuela was sanctioned. I think Cuba got aid from, who was it? Italy. No, Italy got aid from Cuba. Cuba sent doctors to Italy. The Bahamas used their plane to go down to Dominica. They took a plane full of Cuban doctors. Iran had cried out for help from the UN because the US was blocking them as well because they were sanctioned, and the UK loaned Iran 500,000 euros during the pandemic so they could get aid. In Venezuela, the president came on lashing out, saying that, you know, it was inhumane for them to block them during this time. I think both Cuba, which is sanctioned, and Venezuela got aid from, who was it? China. Yeah, China assisted them. Okay, and so even at one point in the Bahamas, some of our PPE equipment was stopped, and Donald Trump cited that he had to make sure that we weren't drug trafficking or no drugs was on that boat. But what had happened at that time was that there was a shortage of PPE equipment in the US, and so they weren't letting anybody export goods out. So we really need to pay attention to sustainability and how to feed ourselves, and you know, when things like this happen, who do we lean on to get, you know, the US is going to protect the US. And so where do we go when countries around the world, everybody's scrambling and struggling? Can we make anything to sustain ourselves? So take some time and look at the questions, ensure that, you know, you can answer them. Where there's an X-ray question, ensure that you have 10 valid points. Sanctions is a bit complex, and so recently all our laws, this was our sanctions framework was deficient, of course, and so now it's been updated, and now there's sanction checking and most institutions is a requirement. Okay, so you can answer the questions with chapter 2 and 3 and do your research in the last few minutes of class. If there are no other questions or concerns, we'll just end there and you can do your classwork until next week.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any more questions or concerns? No? I hope this class, but you're very quiet now. Next week, you'll come prepared with your newspaper readings. And I'd like some of you to say that we have arranged our civic organization and we are staying abreast. I really do hope that you'll have better, more manageable weeks next week. I do understand it's, you know, it was a holiday weekend and perhaps a short week, and so sometimes that's overwhelming, especially coming right off the end of the month. So I do understand, but I don't want you to get lost in the, or overwhelmed by the work catching up on you. And also, is anybody looking at answering question 1 for the homework?
I started to put some points together, but I don't think I'm answering that one.
Okay, so remember now, even if you don't answer that one,
Yeah, I still need to research it. Yes.
yeah,
ma'am.
you need to research it, and you do need to read at least 3 of the fraud cases at the back of the book.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so please use this time wisely. Don't just sign off and say, oh, thank God, class over. No, try and get the classwork done, and then schedule some time so you can at least read one of the fraud cases, and then document it, and then each week have your 3 down packers. Mandatory means that's 20% of your final exam, so you have to answer that question. So please don't let it catch up with you, and then you'll be overwhelmed in the end. Okay, so use your time wisely. You have sufficient time, so use your time wisely. Okay.
Thank you.
Before we go, can I ask, that's Felicia again for me? Can you give me those with the forms? You said W-9 is US straight across?
Yes, ma'am. So if the W-9 is US straight across, so that means W-8 bands have to be non-US. The E at the end of W-8 band, E is for entity. So the one without the E is for individual. The one with an E is for the non-US entity.
Individual, okay. That has an 8 at the end of it?
No, W-8 band, E as an entity. So it's W-8 B-E-N, that's for individual, and W-E-N-E is for entity.
Individual. Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, see, I have it on the screen for you, Sheena. See,
Okay.
this is the E on the N right there that she's referring to. That's for entity. Yeah.
Okay.
And then this is the W-8 band. There's no E on the end, so you know that it's for individual.
Okay, good. Thank
Okay,
you so
and
much.
then the W-9 is straight across US.
Okay. Good. Okay, now I get it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Great. Okay. Okay, so any more questions or concerns? No? Okay, so have a fabulous weekend. I hope you have a lighter week this weekend. You do get some time to spend reading and keeping up to date with the class.
Thank you. Good day, all.
Okay, good day. Enjoy your weekend.
Okay.
You too. Thank you.
Take care, everyone.